When I started making comics, I felt very lost, and a lot of my early comics are just messy to look at. The story's fine, but when you're trying to read the page, your eyes don't know where to go because the pages are not designed well. The first template is called the horizontal stack. It's just a simple idea that you put one idea on top of the next and you go down the page. This one's extremely simple, it's easy for the eye to follow, there's no confusion, you just put what comes next in the next box so that your reader knows where to go without having to think about it. The boxes do not have to be the same size. You can change the size. It just depends, how do you want to distribute your ideas? Which ideas are more important need to go into the larger boxes. I call this one the prison bars. This template is good for creating cinematic shots when you have something that's close and something else that's really far. You can start in the first one and kind of show the progress of moving closer to the thing as you move through each one. That's also really good for conveying location, like maybe you're in one part of a city and each one shows a different part of a city to show that your character is searching for something or that your story is moving locations. Most page layouts kind of follow this basic structure where there's a combination of horizontal and vertical panels. If we were to put these on top of each other, it just create a grid and it would look a lot like a spreadsheet. If you wanted, you could go into your favorite spreadsheet software like Google Sheets or PowerPoint or whatever else, and you could just roughly experiment with page layouts before even putting pencil to paper. I prefer just drawing thumbnails on paper as I'm figuring it out and figuring out the designs there. I like the feel of the paper. This is a quick example I made for one of my boys, and you can see I've already got a combination of horizontals and verticals in there as well. You don't overthink it. The ultimate goal is just to keep things easy to follow. What is the one major goal when telling stories with comics? Always keep it simple. The major goal is to make it easy for your readers to get through the story. If you try to get fancy and it gets confusing, just go back to simple. Small, big, small, also known as the sandwich. When you have a big idea that you want smack dab in the center of the page, this is what you use. Our simple script off to the side here is, in the first panel, boy and girl are looking at each other nervous. Maybe we've been going through 19, 20 issues wondering if this romance is ever going to go anywhere. And here they are looking at each other because they're having a moment. Panel 2, the big panel, they finally kiss after all this time. And we feel a sense of happiness as the reader because they're finally reaching that moment where they're becoming a couple. Panel 3, look of happiness and relief as the characters look at each other because now they have the realization, oh, we're finally starting our relationship. Call this one big small. When you have a really big idea and you want it to take up most of the page, you use this one. You can see here I've got a couple different examples. And I have one small script, Batman as a silhouette approaching the bad guy, and we see the bad guy from behind. So we have two different size top panels here. How does that idea change going from one panel to the next? How would you draw it differently knowing you have a different amount of space to work with? The second panel, we see the terrified face of the bad guy with Batman's shadow looming over him. Again, we have two different size panels here for conveying that same idea. And if you think that is already enough, this is small, big, same script. Now we've got the small panel on top to show Batman as a silhouette approaching a bad guy, and we see the bad guy from behind. We've gone from having a ton of space to work with to just a little bit of space. How would you draw that? How would you convey that idea? And then now we've got the big space for showing the terrified face of the bad guy with Batman's shadow looming over him. Ideas change as you go from panel to panel, but when you keep simple panel design, it makes it easy to follow. So what if I don't want my panels to be exactly like they are in the templates? Well, the panels are just a starting point. The only hard and fast rule is make your pages easy to understand, make them easy to follow. Once you know where your big idea goes, start cutting the panels up. A personal rule of mine is unless I am doing a full page spread, which is where you have one big picture taking up the whole page, I keep at least one horizontal space to separate my ideas. So here's some of my examples. This is my own art. First couple pages are inked by my brother, but pencils are mine. So we've got this guy on the top talking. There's like this really bright light because he's a hologram. And then we've got the girl watching this presentation on the hologram while she's eating an apple. And she's just kind of relaxed inside of this space that she's in. In the next panel, we see a guy walking in, and now this girl is at the computer panel. These pages don't actually come one after the other, but they are from the same book. There's like 4 or 5 pages between these two. And now we see the guy sitting down with the juice box, the girl's saying something, and their ship is descending back towards the Earth. The next one, uninked, we see boy and the girl have disembarked, or I should say the young man and the young woman have disembarked from the ship, being greeted by his mother, and she's saying something that may be making them a little uncomfortable, and then he's like, Mom, why are you saying that? So I don't want to explain these as much. These are just more to show you. Notice that the first 3 examples are all horizontal stacks. I love horizontal stack. That is by far my favorite. If I'm working on a page, I tend to see if I can use a horizontal stack first. I'll look at it and be like, well, is this enough to convey the ideas I'm trying to, or do I need to chop something to show the idea better? The other thing I do a lot is I'll have 2 horizontals and 1 split row, like you see in that last example, where the guy's kind of sitting there like, not again. Then you got another guy approaching, and he's like, how many times is it now? And then the guy's like, as many times as it takes, as he's popping his back as he stands up. Okay, basic page flow. This is the main reason I created the templates. You'll have even experienced artists who, when they sit down and create comics, feel lost. And that's because single illustrations versus comics can sometimes be a completely different animal. Just because you can create a single illustration doesn't mean you can make a comic, because you don't understand page flow. Here we just took the sandwich, the small, big, small, and we just cut it right down the middle in an attempt to make 6 panels. This one's kind of going like a Japanese manga direction, right to left. You look at it and your eyes are immediately like, well, where do I go after cutting the page right down the middle? Your eyes aren't sure where to position themselves. What it seems like we did here is we tried to get slightly more advanced with our page design, but it didn't work out. Advanced page design can absolutely further enhance a story if you know how to use it. But you don't need to use advanced page design to tell a good story. Telling a good, easy to follow story is far more important than anything else when you're making comics. This example of a left to right page shows that our eyes want to reset when you hit the bottom of the row. In the top part of this stack, the eye starts at the top left corner, it hits the bottom right after it gets to the last panel, and it immediately wants to jump over to the top left of the next panel. Just like if you were reading a normal book without pictures. Adding word balloons changes the formula. Your eye does still want to start in the top left corner and reset when it gets to the bottom right. But as soon as we add balloons, it's now trying to start following those balloon placements as well. You'll notice you get to the end of that bottom one, and your eyes starting to flow down through those next bubbles in the next one rather than immediately jumping back to the top corner. Did your eyes kind of do something like this? Even if in the bottom row, if your eye went to the smaller one first, I'm willing to bet it immediately jumped over to the big one after a second, because your brain immediately understands, oh, I'm not supposed to be here. I need to go to the big one. It's big for a reason. When it comes to demanding attention, the bigger something is, the more attention it's going to grab than a small thing. Now that you have some basic design ideas, let me leave you with a tip that has really been helpful to me in my comic making. The big and little principle, otherwise known as asymmetrical design. I did not create this, it's just something that's been in art forever. Basic idea is that identical things are boring and different things are interesting. So here we have a page. I didn't get to see the movie. Oh, the new one? Yeah, the new superhero movie about the guy jumping over rooftops. Dude, you're missing out. I don't suppose you want to go see it with me after school. See it again? You don't have to ask me twice. Look at this page. This one feels a lot more dynamic and a lot more interesting to look at. The top one is closer to the camera. It gives us a sense of depth. Also, in the first example, they're pretty much a mirror image of each other. It's not really interesting to look at. They're the same size, same position, smack dab in the center of the panel. The second one, they're offset a little bit, and one's looking at the other one from a distance. It's just so much more interesting to look at. The second one, the hero is close to the camera, making him look larger and more important. The building in the background shows he is in an urban location, but the building is not as important as the character, and so we've drawn it smaller so that it's not competing with him for our attention. And then the last one, the guys are still roughly the same size like they were in the original one. However, we've changed the positioning. And we've turned one's head. They're closer together. They're no longer like smack dab in the center of the panel. They're now offset a little bit. This creates more interest and actually looks like they're interacting. So when you're not sure what to do, ask yourself, are the things I'm drawing too similar? And remember, identical things are boring. This is identical size things and identical position things. Different things are interesting. Overlap things, that'll create depth. Use size to create depth, and just different things generate interest. Okay, please like and subscribe. I'm going to be doing page breakdowns where I take professional comic pages and show what makes them work or what doesn't. And please leave questions in the comments about things you would like to know more about, and I will be happy to make tutorials around those things as well.